Hey guys, tonight we drift gently into the dusty heart of ancient Mesopotamia, where the rivers run slow, the palm trees whisper secrets to the wind, and you, yes, you, are about to have the most peculiar job in all of Uruk. You wake to the creak of woven reeds beneath you, the smell of clay and last night's incense still hanging in the air. Your little mud brick house breathes in the sunrise with you, its walls warm from centuries of sun, cracked like dry riverbeds but sturdy as a temple oath. Your day begins not with an alarm, but with the rhythmic slap of sandals and distant bleating goats echoing down the alleyways. Light filters through a gap in the wall. No window panes here, just carefully cut holes stuffed with woven mats. Dust motes dance in golden beams, and somewhere outside, a pot crashes, followed by a string of profanity in Sumerian that would make a priest blush. You groan and stretch, limbs heavy with the weight of another important day ahead. As the city of Uruk awakens around you, so does your endless to-do list, because you, lucky dreamer, are the planner of rituals, feasts, and occasionally, something a little more risque. You didn't set out to become a glorified party wrangler for priests, nobles, and wandering poets, but here you are, covered in sleep sweat and regret, one papyrus invitation away from divine punishment or a standing ovation. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere far away, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where this little time machine reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first challenge today? Escaping the gravity of your mat bed. It's not exactly memory foam. It's a tightly packed collection of reeds and rough wool, and your back reminds you with each stretch. You push aside the linen sheet, wrinkled and faintly stained with the wine and sandal oil of the night before, and tiptoe over to the doorway, where the city's scent hits you like a well-thrown amphora. River water, clay dust, animal dung, and, ah yes, someone baking barley bread just down the street. It smells divine, like a warm hug from a god with flowery hands. You duck out into the alley, blinking into the early light. A small boy runs past, giggling and holding what might be a sacred chicken. Behind him, a woman with a bucket yells something that's either a curse or a hymn. Welcome to Uruk, city of kings, scribes, and occasional chaos. The alleyways are already bustling. Merchants arrange fish on mats, slick with scales. A scribe adjusts his headdress and mutters to his tablet. You nod to a temple guard who never remembers your name, but always stares like you've personally offended the pantheon. A dog naps beside a pile of bricks. It may or may not be alive. You don't check. Your destination this morning isn't glamorous. It's not a ziggurat or a royal court. It's a side door near the temple of Inanna, where a priestess named Ini will, if she's in a good mood, hand you today's schedule of rituals, feasts, and celestial oddities. You tread lightly, knowing full well that Eni's good mood is about as common as rain in summer. You pass under a canopy of hanging date fronds, brushing your fingers through their cool shade. The temple looms ahead, squat and massive, built with the kind of confidence only baked mud and divine decree can create. As you reach the side door, you hear chanting. Low, rhythmic, vaguely alarming. Someone's already begun the morning rite. You glance at the sky, still pink with dawn. Overachievers. Inside the stone corridor, the air shifts. Cooler, scented with myrrh and dried herbs. You enter the small side room where Ini keeps her scrolls and her gossip. She doesn't look up as you arrive, just gestures at a tablet with her reed stylus. You've got a full list, she mutters, and the priest of Enki says the stars are twitchy again, so don't forget to reschedule the orgy. You blink. Again? Yes. Mercury's reversed, or Jupiter's upset, or maybe someone dropped a goat liver in the wrong direction. I stopped listening. You sigh and take the tablet, its cuneiform scratched like stubborn graffiti. It's heavy and damp in one corner, possibly with sacred oil. Possibly not. By the way, Annie adds, finally looking up, the barley tax came in, 20 sacks short. Guess who's adjusting the feast budget? You groan, loudly, dramatically. She's unmoved. As you leave the temple office, the rising sun hits the courtyard tiles like fire. You squint against the light, tablet in hand, sandals slapping the ground. You pass by the statue of Ishtar, who seems to smirk at you knowingly. Or maybe that's just the way the moss has grown on her cheeks. On the way back home, you stop by the canal, watching the barges drift by. A man on one raft sings badly, while balancing a stack of beer jugs. Another fringe ritual, perhaps, or just a hangover cure in the making. Historians still argue whether the ziggurat, just visible in the haze beyond, is truly a temple or an observatory, or maybe just a really ambitious ladder. Either way, you'll likely end up climbing it later. Again, you reach your house just as a neighbor waves a burnt offering at a flock of birds, probably meant to ensure her husband doesn't come home early from the beer hall, or that he does, depending on how good the offering was. Inside, you sit with your tablet, scratching your chin and contemplating the day ahead. You'll need to finalize a guest list, organize a flower arrangement that won't wilt in this heat, and maybe, just maybe, ask that merchant if he really has imported sandal dye from beyond Akkad, or if he's just been dipping it in wine again. It's going to be a long day. But for now, you're awake, you're breathing, and the priestesses haven't cursed you yet. That's a win. You scratch at the corner of your beard, or if you're beardless, you simply flick a beetle off your robe, and face the second great ordeal of the day. Personal hygiene, Mesopotamian style. There is no soap here. There is no plumbing. There is no 5-step skincare routine, unless you count dusting your face with ash to appease a minor goddess. Still, ritual and respectability demand cleanliness. So you wander to the side of your home, where your personal bathroom awaits. A small clay basin, a chipped jug of slightly muddy canal water, and an ominously fragrant lump of bitumen resin that you pretend helps with odors. You pour a small splash of water over your hands. It trickles between your fingers, darkened by clay and last night's regrets. The jug has probably been blessed. Probably. You start with your teeth. Well, gums, technically. Chewing on a twig of salty licorice root, you work it across your mouth, pretending it doesn't taste like bitter tree. Your breath improves from fermented garlic to merely ancient tavern. A win. Next, you wipe yourself down with a damp cloth, which once belonged to your uncle. Possibly still does. You rinse it between uses with a vague sense of hope. You dab scented oil behind your ears, your own special blend of myrrh, crushed dates, and wishful thinking. Somewhere, a priest is shaking his head. Then, the bitumen. Not for the faint of heart. It's technically tar, but in a society where perfume is rare and deodorant non-existent, people smear a little under their arms or on their necks in the belief that it masks body odor. It doesn't. It simply adds freshly paved road to the scent profile. You use it sparingly. You're not a monster. In the corner, a bowl of red ochre stares at you. Decorative powder, popular among the more fashion-forward temple workers. You consider it, then brush some across your cheeks. Just a little rouge. You've got meetings, after all. As you inspect yourself in a polished bronze mirror, more a guess than a reflection, your neighbor calls over the wall. The goat got loose again. It's chewing the priest's robe. You sigh. Again. You step out into the alley, tightening your sash, and behold the goat, a smug little creature, indeed nibbling on the trailing edge of a pale linen robe. The young priest attached to the robe is flailing in circles, trying not to scream in a way that would alarm the gods. You approach and shoo the goat with an authoritative grunt, which works about as well as reasoning with wet clay. The goat pauses, glances at you, then deliberately relieves itself on your sandal. You nod. Understood. The day is now cursed. You make a mental note. Find goat wrangler, or exorcist, or butcher. Back inside, you scan today's tasks scratched into your tablet. Your handwriting is uneven, but then again, you're not a trained scribe. That's what apprentices are for. You summon yours, little Mealy, who arrives barefoot and wide-eyed, nibbling on a stale fig. She glances at your bitumen-streaked neck and says, "You look like a cracked amphora." "Thank you," you reply flatly. "Now, recite the feast schedule." She does, half singing it in that tone young scribes use to annoy their mentors. You hear words like flower garland procurement, wine amphora blessing, and possible lion rental. You stop her there. "What do you mean, lion?" "It was on the last tablet, the one from the high priestess." You rub your temples. "Lions are not props." Mealy shrugs. "They are when they've been declawed." You silently pray to Nabu, god of wisdom, for patience. He does not answer. Outside, the city buzzes louder. The sun now climbs above the temple rooftops, turning the pale bricks golden. A cart clatters past, overflowing with onions and dried leeks. A vendor yells about his unbeatable prices, while a second vendor yells louder that he's lying. Mesopotamian marketing at its finest. You decide to pay a visit to the local oil merchant. You need more for your lamp, your skin, and possibly your soul. The walk is short but harrowing. Narrow alleys, donkey traffic, and one very determined pig. You pass a shrine to a minor goddess of baked goods. Someone's left an offering of what might be a fig tart, or a failed attempt. The oil merchant greets you with a grin too wide for someone surrounded by amphorae and beeswax. He's a known exaggerator, claims he once sold oil to Gilgamesh himself. "What'll it be today?" he asks, hands already on his measuring jug. "Nettle blend? Sweet almond? Or the very rare phoenix egg distillate?" You raise a brow. "Phoenix?" "Well, chicken, but spicy." You opt for something basic, and while he scoops it into a small jar, he begins ranting about how the high priest recently slipped on a fish. You half listen, half dream of moving to Babylon. As you walk back, you spot a shrine cleaner sweeping the steps to the temple. She pauses to wipe her brow and mutters, "Why do the gods need so many petals?" That's a good question. It's a known fact that ancient Mesopotamians adored their rituals. Flowers, oils, chants, even musical accompaniment involving lyres, flutes, and occasionally someone banging on a pot. Yet, historians still argue whether all these excesses were meant to honor the gods or simply outdo the temple next door. Some scholars claim the ritual decor was symbolic. Others say it was just peer pressure with a divine stamp. Back home, you review the final task of your toilet ritual. Prayer. Even in mundane moments, it's tradition to offer thanks to the gods for survival. You close your eyes and mutter a line to Enlil under your breath, something about protection from vengeful goats and overly confident oil merchants. A strange peace settles over you, just for a moment, before the goat returns and tries to eat your sash. You look at the sky, sigh deeply, and return inside to dress properly. The linen is coarse but clean. You throw a belt over it, then drape your party planner sash, a colorful strip of cloth that marks you as an organizer of public ceremonies, events, and questionably divine revelry. You're ready. Probably. You step out again, this time in full regalia, armed with your official planner's sash and a borrowed sense of confidence. The heat of the morning is rising now, enough to blur the air just above the rooftops, where clay tiles crackle like drying bread. It's barely mid-morning, but Uruk doesn't care. It runs on a chaotic schedule dictated by celestial charts, barley shipments, and that one priest who insists dawn technically lasts until noon if he's late. Your first stop? The scribal quarters. It's time to finalize guest lists for the upcoming lunar festival, a celebration involving sacred dances, offerings, a minor performance involving masked actors, and, allegedly, a modestly sensual poetry circle, organized by the priestesses of Inanna. Your job? Make sure the modest part doesn't fly off like a parchment in a dust storm. You navigate through the southern courtyard, dodging pottery shards and half-finished wall carvings. At one point, you sidestep a very determined woman pushing a cart of fermented fish. She doesn't acknowledge you. She's on a mission, probably part of the catering. The scribal quarters are tucked behind the main temple, down a slope that catches all the wind and none of the glamour. Inside, 3 scribes sit cross-legged on woven mats, eyes red from too much clay dust, fingers blackened with stylus smudges. Their cuneiform tablets are scattered around them like fallen leaves. One of them, older, wrinkled, always chewing on a reed, waves you over without looking up. "Planner," he grunts. "We've revised the guest list again. High Priest says no musicians from Lagash this time. Apparently they played a cursed chord at the last ritual." You nod, unimpressed. "Did the god smite anyone?" "No, but someone dropped their date wine." "Ah, a true tragedy." He hands you the revised list. It's long, too long. It includes dignitaries, poets, 6 merchants, 2 people labeled only as mystics, and, for reasons unclear, a visiting astrologer's goat. You make a note to check on that. You don't need a repeat of the last incident, when a sacred dance turned into a chase scene. The scribes return to their tablets. You linger just long enough to overhear them arguing over whether the word for exalted guest should include an extra wedge. One insists it changes the meaning to drunk noble. You leave before you're dragged into a grammatical duel. Back outside, the sun is high enough to start punishing those without shade. You shield your eyes and walk north toward the marketplace, where you'll need to confirm some rather delicate arrangements. Garlands, perfumed oils, reed fans, and the big one. Dancers. Not just any dancers, temple-approved performers capable of interpreting sacred myth through movement, without triggering another goat-related scandal. The marketplace is alive with sound. Traders shouting, children laughing, someone playing a badly tuned flute. You weave through the chaos, dodging vendors and chickens. A perfume merchant recognizes you and waves you over, grinning like he's about to sell you something you don't need. "Planner," he says, bowing dramatically. "I have a scent so divine Ishtar herself would weep." You arch a brow. "Last time you said that, I smelled like smoked fish." "Ah, but this time I've refined it. Notes of myrrh, river wind, and lotus." "Lotus doesn't grow here." "Exactly, that's the mystery." You decline politely and head to the garland stall, where a young woman is weaving petals into long chains. She works fast, fingers nimble, headscarf tucked tight. Her flowers are fresh, even in the heat. Marigold, jasmine, and a few wild desert blooms dyed with berry juice. You confirm your order. 7 large garlands for the altar, 12 for guests of honor, and a few extras for dramatic effect. You don't mention the backup stash in your storage jar. Sometimes petals wilt, sometimes they disappear mysteriously, usually into the hair of a flirtatious novice priest. Next, you visit the head of the dancers' troupe. She sits cross-legged under a tent canopy, fanning herself with a palm frond and drinking something that smells like regret. You bow respectfully. She doesn't bow back. just squints at you. "What now?" she says. You hand her the schedule. She scans it, muttering under her breath. Ritual dance, moonlight procession, veil work. You know that girl can't do veil work, right? She gets tangled. She'll rehearse. She'll trip. You offer her a small jug of pomegranate wine. She snatches it. She'll rehearse. Deal-making at its finest. As you leave, a minor earthquake of activity erupts nearby. Someone's pet monkey has escaped and is now clambering over an amphora display. You pretend not to notice. It's not your problem. Yet. You pass a wall where the latest temple proclamation is etched in wet clay. All ceremonial participants must be purified before sundown. You smile. That'll be fun to enforce. By the time you return home, your sandals are coated in dust and flower petals. Your head spins with lists, dancers, scribes, musicians, food, ritual sequence, poetry order, seating arrangements, sacred timing, divine appeasement. And somewhere on the list, don't forget to feed the astrologer's goat. Inside, Melly greets you with an exaggerated yawn. "I made a new list," she says, handing you a waxed board. You scan it. She's included a section for possible surprise omens and drawn a little icon of a crab next to the entry for seafood stew. "Nice touch," you say. She beams. "Also, the flower guy came by. He said the marigolds are sad." You frown. "Sad?" "That's what he said. Then he cried a little." You nod. "Understood." Historians still argue whether Mesopotamians actually assigned emotion to plants or if this was just poetic license taken by eccentric traders. Some evidence suggests that temple gardeners held a semi-sacred role, whispering to their fields and treating wilting as a sign of divine disapproval. You treat it as an inconvenient delay. The afternoon wanes. The light softens, casting long shadows over your courtyard. The smells of evening fires and roasting lentils drift in from the next home. Someone starts playing a lyre, terribly. You sit down, surrounded by scrolls, schedules, and flower debris. Tomorrow, you'll have to supervise a practice run for the ceremony, double-check the moon phase, and meet with the priest of Nana, who insists on reciting all his ritual lines 3 times to honor the sacred repetition. You'll nod. You'll pretend to care. You'll sip date beer and hope no one adds spontaneous fireworks to the proceedings. For now, you rest. A little. You wake from a brief and unsatisfying nap to the sound of drumming. Soft at first, then louder, like someone politely warning you the world is about to explode. You blink, groan, and roll off your mat. The sky is turning bronze, the edges of clouds glowing like hammered copper plates. It's rehearsal time. You tie your sash back into place and collect your notes. The rehearsal will take place in the temple courtyard, which conveniently echoes every complaint made within it. The acoustics are excellent for both sacred chants and passive-aggressive muttering. The moment you arrive, the chaos begins. The dancers are late, the drummer is early, the junior priest is arguing with the acolyte over whether the ceremonial incense smells too much like roasted onions. You scan the scene and spot the high priest of Nana, the god of the moon, sitting beneath a shady awning, sipping barley tea and pretending not to notice the carnage unfolding in his name. You approach. He raises an eyebrow and gestures to the growing cluster of disoriented performers. "Well," he says, "I trust everything is running according to plan." You smile through your teeth. "It's all going exactly as the stars foretold." He chuckles, though it sounds suspiciously like a prayer for patience. The drummers begin again. Slow, deliberate, the rhythm meant to mimic the phases of the moon. You nod approval. The dancers trickle in, some still chewing sesame cakes, others adjusting veils and floral crowns. One is missing a sandal. You try not to ask. "Places!" you shout, which means nothing to half of them. They shuffle uncertainly into position, and the rehearsal begins. The first sequence is the invocation of Night's Path, a stylized dance representing the moon's rise and the god's journey across the heavens. It's elegant in theory, arms sweeping like starlight, hips shifting like desert wind. In practice, one dancer forgets which direction east is and spins straight into a ceremonial brazier. No fire, thankfully, just a bruised ego and singed hem. You close your eyes, inhale deeply through your nose, and mutter a line from the sacred planner's code. Always expect the incense to fall over. Melly appears at your side, chewing a plum. That was creative. She was supposed to be the moon. Maybe she was a comet? Comets are bad omens. Oops. You instruct the group to reset while you adjust the lighting plan. Literally. The placement of oil lamps around the temple alters the shadows, and tonight's practice is the last chance to make sure the goddess Inanna isn't accidentally spotlighted from the armpit. You step aside to consult with the torchbearers. These are enthusiastic young boys who treat fire like a toy. You give them the standard lecture about not swinging torches near linen robes, sacrificial offerings, or the high priest's beard. They nod solemnly, then immediately start sword fighting with the unlit sticks. Next, the poetry segment. 3 readers step forward, each holding a tablet with carefully etched verses, devotional odes meant to be read aloud during the procession. The first one, an older man with a voice like a crumbling wall, begins reciting a tribute to Inanna's radiance. It's going well until a nearby donkey lets out an impressively timed bray, throwing off his rhythm and, briefly, his faith in the divine. The second poet, a younger woman with sharp eyes, reads with dramatic pauses and arched brows. Her poem is suggestive. Too suggestive. You catch the high priest coughing into his tea. You glance at Melly. "Did you screen these verses?" She shrugs. "I thought they'd be lively. You gave me a poem about divine yearning with metaphors involving melons. Ripe melons. Please go revise that." She skips off to fix the melons, leaving you to manage the final reciter, a nervous temple cook named Etana, who was volunteered against his will. He squints at his tablet and mutters the poem so quietly it sounds like he's apologizing for it. Still, the content is appropriate, and it doesn't offend the gods or the goats, so you count it as a win. Historians still argue whether these performances were more religious expression or social theater. Some suggest the ceremonies were designed as community bonding rituals, full of symbolism understood by all. Others argue it was all political posturing, a way for temples to outshine rivals and impress royal visitors with veils and verse. You decide it's probably both, and you're the poor soul stuck between them. As rehearsal drags on, the moon begins to rise. It's a waning crescent tonight, pale and unimpressed. The torchbearers light up their brands, casting flickers across the dancers, who are now gliding in slow, synchronized circles. The effect is almost magical, like something out of a myth or a vision dreamt by a half-drunk prophet. And then the goat arrives. Not the one from earlier. A new goat, festooned with flower garlands and escorted by the astrologer himself. For balance, he explains, the goat represents earthly stubbornness beneath the celestial order. You stare. It just knocked over a lamp. Symbolism. You exhale through your nose, the way someone who's too tired to argue might. You send Meili to secure the goat, and maybe give it something to chew that isn't sacred. By the end of rehearsal, the courtyard smells like oil smoke, sandalwood, and mild panic. The dancers bow. The torch-bearers extinguish their flames, one dramatically, one by accident, and one by sitting on it. The poets shuffle off stage. The high priest claps once, slowly. "Well," he says, "it's better than last year." Last year involved a collapsing altar, a misunderstood moon phase, and 3 guests who claimed to be possessed by Sumerian wine spirits. You'll take this as progress. The rehearsal ends and the night cools, the stars peeking out like distant scribes observing your every failure. You linger in the courtyard, scribbling notes on a tablet. Tighten choreography, fix poem number 2, double-check veil placements, and please, for the love of Nana, secure the goats you walk home slowly, soothed by the hush of the city. Most doors are shuttered now. A few flickers of light peek through cracks in clay walls. Somewhere, a lullaby drifts through the air, sung by a mother to a child who probably just dropped her own bitumen lamp. You reach your door, set down your tablet, and sit for a moment. There's still so much to do before the ceremony. But for now, you watch the moon climb higher, glowing faintly behind the temple spires. Some say the gods walk the earth on nights like this. You wonder if they watch your rehearsals and laugh. You hope so. The morning air carries a heaviness that warns you. Today will be long, strange, and possibly interrupted by weather, omens, or that woman who insists on being seated next to no one. You stretch, splash your face with water from the cistern, and chew on a piece of flatbread so dry it could double as a roofing tile. The final day of planning has arrived. You're halfway into your robe when Melly bursts in, holding a scroll and wearing the face of someone who has seen an omen, or worse, an unexpected guest. "They're here," she says. You blink. "Who's here?" She holds up the scroll. "The delegation from Mari, early, with animals." Of course they are. The Marians are known for 3 things: arriving too early, wearing too many layers in the heat, and bringing diplomatic gifts that feel like a dare. Last year they gifted Uruk a ceremonial feather cloak made of vulture plumage. No one knew what to do with it, so it ended up in a priest's closet, occasionally used to sweep the altar. You throw on your sash and head out. The Mari delegation stands near the temple gate, flanked by donkeys draped in purple cloth and a man carrying what appears to be a large bronze duck. The leader, a round-faced noble with rings on every finger, steps forward and beams. "Planner," he says, mispronouncing your name by at least 2 syllables, "we arrive bearing goodwill and one extremely important chicken." "That's a duck," you say. He winks. "It's symbolic." You offer your practiced diplomat's smile. "Of course. Welcome to Uruk. We're so pleased you've brought a meaningful waterfowl." The duck is passed to a confused acolyte. You make a note to find a safe and moderately sacred spot for it, somewhere between honored artifact and please keep it from knocking over the wine. After the formal greetings, you escort the delegation to the guest compound. It's been swept, perfumed, and stocked with barley cakes, fruit, and enough scented oil to marinate a priest. Still, the Marians glance around as if expecting walls made of gold. One leans in and whispers, "Is it true your ziggurat hums at night?" "Only during the solstice," you deadpan. "Ah, sacred resonance. We suspected as much." Historians still argue whether the Mesopotamians actually believed their ziggurats made noise, or if the hum was just wind through the bricks, or maybe chanting priests with too much echo. Either way, it adds a certain mystique to your property values. Once the guests are settled, you hurry off to oversee preparations for the feast. The kitchen smells like garlic, date syrup, and barely concealed stress. A dozen cooks stir pots, knead dough, and shout over one another. At the center of it all stands Etana, the cook poet, wielding a ladle like a royal scepter. "Etana," you call, "how's the lentil stew?" "Heroic," he says, then leans in. "But we're down a pot. One cracked." You sigh. Can it be repaired? It's holding together with hope and barley paste. Sounds like me. He chuckles and returns to stirring. You glance over the rest of the preparations. There's spiced lamb, roasted fish with citrus and coriander, honey cakes, and a jug labeled only with a skull and the word careful. You don't ask. The servers are ready too. Young temple initiates dressed in clean linen, faces glowing with nervous pride. You remind them, no tripping, no unsolicited chanting, and never tell a guest their wine smells funny, even if it smells like burning sandals. From there, you're pulled into a whirlwind of minor crises. A musician lost her lyre string. A priest claims he's misplaced the ceremonial crown. It's on his head. A dancer refuses to go on unless her brother, who is not in the ceremony, is allowed to sit front row. By midday, your list has grown longer than the Euphrates in flood season. Meili meets you halfway down the temple steps, holding a tablet so full of script it looks like it's sweating. New requests, she says. The astrologer wants to rearrange the seating to reflect the constellation of the bull. The Marians want their duck blessed, and the sacred fire pit has termites. Termites? Tiny, aggressive ones. One bit a torchbearer. He cried. You rub your temples. Okay. Put the duck next to the sacrificial goat. It'll feel at home. Let the astrologer rearrange the seats as long as he doesn't block the altar. And burn the fire pit. Irony accepted. She scribbles, nods, and runs off, muttering something about biting insects and divine retribution. You grab a moment of quiet under a shaded archway and review the schedule again. It's a delicate dance now, every moment timed with moonrise, incense offerings, poetic recitations, and sacred choreography. One misstep, and you'll be explaining to the high priest why the moon offering turned into a slapstick farce. Speaking of the moon, you check the sky. Clear. A soft breeze from the west, the kind of evening that feels briefly eternal, until it's shattered by someone yelling about figs. You follow the sound and find a priest arguing with a fruit vendor over whether the figs are sufficiently ritually appropriate. You settle the dispute with a coin and a promise to wash the figs yourself. You're now a fruit inspector. This was not in your job description. You pass the sacred brewery and wave to the brewmaster, who raises a frothing mug in salute. He offers you a drink. You consider it. Strong Mesopotamian beer, thick, cloudy, and drunk through a straw to avoid the floating sediment. You decline. You need your focus. Barely. One last sweep through the temple. Incense bowls arranged, cushions fluffed, veils in place, poets rehearsing, this time without melon metaphors, dancers stretching, goats nibbling calmly, the duck looking suspiciously at a garland of hyacinth. You nod. Almost ready. Back in your quarters, Meili hands you a clean sash. You'll want to look perfect, she says, or at least mildly competent. Thanks. Also, the high priest asked for a summary of the omen logs. Omen logs? Every suspicious sneeze, cloud shape, and goat behavior from the last moon cycle. You said you'd write them. You stare. I was joking. He wasn't. You sit, pick up your stylus, and begin inventing an elaborate but optimistic omen history. You include a dream about 3 doves dancing on a clay pot, which you claim symbolizes divine approval, weather cooperation, and minor mischief. You know the high priest will love it. The sun begins to set. Shadows stretch across the temple walls like long fingers of the past, and the distant call of a flute drifts through the evening haze. Tomorrow is the ceremony. Tonight you rehearse in your mind every line, every light, every cue. You exhale, slowly, deeply. Let the gods be merciful. Let the dancers remember their steps. Let the duck behave. You wake before dawn, though technically you never really slept, just drifted in and out of brief dreamscapes featuring juggling priests and exploding barley cakes. The air is heavy with that curious calm that only settles over a city holding its breath. Today is the ceremony. You stand outside, watching as Uruk begins to stir. The streets are damp from dew, and every surface holds a hush of anticipation. Market vendors shuffle out of their homes, their faces unusually quiet. Even the goats seem contemplative. You wonder if they know they'll be playing supporting roles in a celestial reenactment before sunset. After a quick rinse from the cistern and a bite of dried dates, you head toward the temple. Everything must be perfect. Except, of course, nothing ever is. Meili greets you halfway there, jogging slightly, her hair already frizzing from the morning's humidity. The ceremonial canopy is leaning, she says. How leaning? Let's say if the wind sneezes, it's going to take out a flute section. You groan. Fixable? She holds up a coil of rope and a jar of pitch. I brought options. Together you oversee the emergency reinforcement of the sacred canopy. The poles are reseated in their sockets, the cloth retentioned, and the nearby torch-bearers are threatened with dire consequences if they touch anything. One boy nods solemnly while slowly picking his nose. Next up, a final run-through with the dancers. You stand on the temple's eastern terrace, where golden light begins to bathe the ziggurat's topmost level. The dancers arrive in formation, their veils catching the wind like sails. Meili hands out final instructions while you check the oil lamps and incense basins. All around you, the city is awakening into something more than itself. Residents pouring into the courtyards, nobles stepping out in ceremonial robes, priests anointing their foreheads with scented oil. There's a thrum beneath your feet, like the city is humming softly under your sandals. Historically, major public ceremonies in Mesopotamia weren't just religious rituals. They were theatrical, political, and astronomical events rolled into one. Temples aligned to the stars, chants timed with solstices, dancers mimicking constellations. Whether this was all for divine benefit or just exceptionally dramatic civic engagement is still up for scholarly debate. You choose to believe it was both. And you, dear planner, are at the heart of it. You take your place beside the high priest. He smells like myrrh and control. Any disasters yet? He murmurs. Only partial canopy collapse, minor torch dueling, and one flute swallowed by accident. He nods. Excellent. A calm morning. You smile, because this man once led a ceremony during a sandstorm and called it bracing. As the sun clears the rooftops, the city begins to gather. The sacred plaza fills with people, nobles in embroidered robes, merchants with anxious frowns, pilgrims carrying offerings. Children are hoisted onto shoulders. Somewhere, someone is already selling souvenir amulets that you definitely didn't authorize. You glance up at the ziggurat. At its summit, the sacred fire has been lit. A column of smoke twists upward, delicate and deliberate, like a signal to the heavens. And just like that, it begins. The musicians strike their first chord, a slow, haunting tune played on flutes, lyres, and hand drums. It resonates through the temple courtyard like the sound of the universe exhaling. The dancers emerge from beneath the archway, veils flowing, arms extended. The dance of the celestial divide starts slow, meant to mirror the parting of heavens and earth. Every step is choreographed to reflect not just beauty, but meaning. They circle the sacred basin, each swirl of fabric representing a star's journey across the sky. You watch, breath held, and they nail it, for now. The audience is rapt. Even the Mari delegation looks impressed. Their duck, blessed and peacefully tied to a pillar, quacks once in approval. Your job is not over, though. You're already preparing for the next transition, the arrival of the sacred relics. Accompanied by temple guards, 2 priests carry polished wooden chests inlaid with lapis lazuli, each containing symbols of Inanna's power: a looped staff, a carved lion, a copper mirror. These are not just props. These are relics of terrifying prestige. One rumor claims the mirror once showed a priest his own death. Another insists the lion statue once roared at a thief. You've never seen either of these things happen, but you did once knock the lion over and spent a week convinced you were cursed. Turned out it was just stomach worms. The priest set the chests before the altar. Incense swells in the air. Sweet, acrid, dizzying. Someone in the crowd faints from the scent, but it's considered an honor, so no one panics. Now it's time for the recitations. Etana, newly upgraded from cook to poet laureate, steps forward, his scroll trembling in his hands. He bows. The crowd quiets. He begins with the Ode to Inanna's Gaze, a rhythmic chant woven with imagery of stars, storm clouds, and barley fields. His voice is steady, low, and rich like a stew that's been simmering all day. A breeze picks up. The canopy flutters but does not collapse. Thank the gods. Next comes the astrologer, with his slightly too long chant detailing planetary alignments. He uses the word precession 5 times, and you watch 3 audience members visibly zone out. But the priests nod gravely, as if confirming the moon is indeed in the correct quadrant. Historians still argue whether these readings were truly divine revelations or simply the world's earliest PowerPoint presentations. You're inclined to believe they served both functions: tell the people something important and make it sound impressive enough that no one asks too many questions. Then comes the main ritual. The high priest stands, arms raised. A hush falls over the entire plaza. He calls to Inanna. He invokes her titles: Queen of Heaven, Guardian of the Threshold, Weaver of Fates. The dancers kneel. The musicians play a solemn chord. You've timed this next part to align with the sun striking the eastern edge of the ziggurat. And miraculously, it works. Just as the priest lifts the copper mirror, the sunlight hits it, casting a beam that bounces off the altar and into the sacred pool. Gasps ripple through the crowd. One child drops a pomegranate. The astrologer bows so low he bumps his nose on the tile. It's perfect. Your heart is racing, not with panic this time, but something close to awe. The priest completes the invocation. The dancers rise again. The ceremony moves into its final procession. Drums echo like a heartbeat through the city as veiled figures spiral outward, carrying candles, flowers, and small clay figurines into the watching crowd. People are crying, smiling, whispering prayers. It's working. You glance up at the sky. The moon, pale in the daylight, is just visible above the temple spire. You smile to yourself. No juggling priests, no burning goats, no weeping nobles, just ritual, just rhythm, just reverence. And somewhere, tucked between the bricks of this ancient place, a little bit of magic that no tablet can ever quite record. The procession ends not with a bang, but with a sigh, the collective exhale of an entire city that just held its breath through divine theater. Petals drift on the breeze. The dancers bow one last time. You catch the faintest echo of a flute before silence returns. And then, applause. Not the wild kind you'd find at a wrestling match or after a particularly good goat story. This is respectful, murmured, yet undeniable. Palm against palm, soft and rhythmic, spreading through the courtyard like a ripple in the Euphrates. You allow yourself, just briefly, a moment of pride. And then you remember, this is only the halfway point, because now comes the feast. You return to the temple's rear court where the kitchen staff waits, already buzzing like a nest of hornets who've discovered a pomegranate festival. Etana greets you at the threshold, wearing an apron smeared with dates and possibly lamb grease. "The stew," he says, "is transcendental." "Good. Anything not going according to plan?" He scratches his head. "The fish has a strange aftertaste." "Strange how?" "Like enlightenment followed by regret." You nod, concerned. "Maybe let the priests try it first." Tables are being set in the temple's grand banquet hall, long wooden surfaces laid with patterned cloths, polished bronze dishes, and clay cups that have been rapidly scrubbed clean. Temple boys haul jugs of sweet beer, grunting and sloshing as they move like herds of mildly coordinated sheep. The guests arrive slowly, migrating in loose clusters. You've already planned the seating chart with all the precision of a Sumerian star map. Nobles up front, clergy near the fire bowls, dancers along the southern wall, and the Mari delegation given their own alcove, preferably far from the fig plate. And yes, the duck has its own cushion. Meli appears at your elbow with a new list of problems. The harpist has blisters, the wine steward insulted the brewer, and the sacred table centerpiece is missing. You blink. The what? The barley pyramid. It vanished. Gone. You sigh, already picturing a temple guard using it as a hat. Fine. Replace it with a bowl of figs. That always seems to shut people up. Meanwhile, the harpist is soothed with a cloth soaked in lavender oil. The wine steward is temporarily reassigned to the water table, and the brewer is given a place of honor to prevent further sulking. Guests begin to eat, and for a few shining moments, it all works. The roasted lamb falls apart at the touch of a knife. The lentils are aromatic and warming. The beer flows freely, and the honey cakes arrive in perfect hexagons. Even the fish, strange aftertaste and all, is met with contemplative chewing and a few approving nods. You make your way through the room, smiling, complimenting, refilling cups with the fluid grace of someone who has done this 27 times before. Which you have, twice in the rain, once during a goat stampede. A noble from Lagash corners you beside the barley bread. "This feast," he says, voice low and impressed, "reminds me of the time we entertained a Babylonian prince, only less screaming, high praise." You're halfway through sipping some watered wine when someone calls out, "Story." A story. It begins with one drunk scribe and ends in a chorus of voices demanding a tale. You glance at the high priest, who gives a weary nod. Permission granted. You climb atop a small platform near the hearth. Meli hands you a date cake as a bribe for bravery. You chew thoughtfully, then begin. "Let me tell you the tale of the goat who spoke in dreams," you say, and laughter ripples across the room. It's a ridiculous story, one you invented years ago after a festival went sideways and a goat really did fall asleep in the incense pile. But now, it's tradition. People lean in. Even the Mari duck seems to perk up. You paint a vivid picture. A dreaming goat wandering the cosmos, guided by the goddess Nenshe, stumbling upon the secrets of divine laundry and forbidden barley. You throw in exaggerated impressions of local priests, a sly wink at the high scribe's laugh. The crowd eats it up. At one point, a child interrupts with, "Did the goat meet Enlil?" You pause, deadpan. "He tried, but Enlil was out." Roars of laughter. You finish the story with a flourish, something about the goat returning to Earth with cosmic knowledge, but forgetting it all because he sneezed. The applause is loud and a little too enthusiastic. You bow, gracefully knocking over a plate of candied figs. More laughter. As the feast continues, you circulate again, checking on things. The dancers have swapped veils for second helpings. A priest and a merchant are arguing over dream interpretations. Someone is carving constellations into a loaf of bread. You overhear one priest mutter, "Historians will never believe this part." You think, if only they knew. Later, the musicians begin a gentler set, softer strings, long flute notes like whispers. The room dims slightly as torches are replaced, and shadows stretch like drowsy cats across the stone walls. And just when you think you'll sneak away for a minute of solitude, "The goat has escaped," says Melly. You blink. What goat? The ceremonial one, the backup goat. He's gone. You glance around. Sure enough, there's no goat in sight. Together you rush to the temple courtyard, where you find the animal not rampaging, not destroying sacred relics, just standing peacefully in a flower bed, chewing with philosophical intensity. You exhale. Let's just pretend that's part of the ritual. Should we name him? You think. Dreamsinger. Melly nods. May his chewings reveal mysteries. Goat secured, you finally slip away to the upper terrace, seeking a moment of silence. Below, the banquet continues. Laughter rises like incense. The moon is higher now, bright and full, bathing the ziggurat in silver. You sit against a warm stone wall, feeling tired in a way that's not unpleasant. Your bones ache, your feet protest, but your heart is oddly light. This city, this temple, this strange and glorious ritual, you've made it all work. Not flawlessly, but meaningfully. You wonder if any of this will be remembered. And then you smile. Because whether written in cuneiform or carried in song, something always lingers. The moon hangs like a polished silver coin above the ziggurat, casting long shadows across Uruk's rooftops. You stretch, limbs heavy with the weight of success and exhaustion, and watch as the final echoes of celebration drift from the temple halls below. The feast winds down. Laughter softens. Somewhere, a flute lets out one last sighing note before silence settles over the stone. You know what's coming next. Cleanup. No ritual is complete without the sacred act of dragging wine-stained tablecloths, sticky plates, and half-eaten barley triangles back into order. You sigh, stand, and head down the winding temple stairs to find Melly already issuing instructions like a battle general in sandals. Left table, remove plates. Right table, check for surviving cutlery, avoid the fish. It's meditating. A few loyal assistants, most of whom are barely upright, start clearing the mess. You spot two dancers sleeping under a bench, wrapped in shawls like particularly fashionable mummies. One scribe is talking in his sleep about taxes. The Mari delegation has vanished, but the duck remains, now pecking gently at a bowl of raisins. You begin collecting spent oil lamps, their wicks curled like tiny burnt feathers. The clay bowls are slick with wax. You hum softly to yourself. An old lullaby your grandmother used to sing while sweeping millet husks from the doorstep. The words are gone, but the tune still follows you, gentle as the wind curling through a date palm. While you mop up what may or may not be spilled honey beer near the altar, you spot something unusual. A clay tablet wedged beneath the priest's chair. You pull it out carefully. It's covered in delicate cuneiform script, one of the more poetic kinds, full of curved lines and lyrical spacing. You squint at it. It's a prayer, or maybe a song. Something about stars and the silence of figs. You tuck it into your sash. One for the collection. Historically, temples often doubled as archives. Libraries of clay tablets lined the back chambers, contracts, hymns, omens, recipes. Mesopotamian scribes were obsessive record keepers, yet many tablets remain undeciphered. Historians still debate whether the most beautifully carved ones were religious texts, or just really well-written shopping lists. You head to the outer courtyard to check on the perimeter, partly for order, partly because you need a minute of quiet. The city is still. The torches along the main road flicker lazily in their sconces. Far in the distance, you can hear the splash of water as someone refills jars from a communal well. A group of temple guards sits in a semicircle, sharing the last of their flatbread and a story about a demon that lives in the western gate. You don't interrupt them. It's not a bad story. As you walk the temple's southern wall, you pause to look over the fields beyond the city. Moonlight spills across rows of barley, already waving faintly in the breeze. There's something comforting in how the land continues, unimpressed by ceremony, unmoved by spectacle. Back inside, the cleanup winds down. You find Melly at the storage room, stacking ceremonial masks with the care of someone tucking in children. She turns, face flushed with fatigue and triumph. "Well," she says, "we didn't catch fire. Or collapse a ziggurat. Or offend a minor deity. Depending on how Dreamzinger's chewing is interpreted." You both laugh, the kind of tired, delirious laugh that only comes at the end of something massive. She hands you a damp cloth and gestures toward the courtyard tiles. "There's fig paste on the threshold of the sacred gate. Truly an abomination." You wipe it clean, because some acts of devotion involve fruit-based sabotage. Later, in the inner sanctum, the high priest holds a final gathering of temple workers. Not a ritual, not really. More like a post-battle debriefing, minus the helmets. "Tonight," he says, "was worthy of record." He nods to you, especially due to a certain planner's relentless obsession with timing and terrifyingly detailed diagrams. Everyone chuckles. Even the astrologer cracks a smile, though he's still muttering something about lunar angles and why the duck moved. The priest pours out small cups of spiced wine. You raise your suitayuajat, clink it against Melly's, and feel the warmth of it slip into your chest like a secret. As people begin to filter out toward their sleeping quarters, you linger. Your mind is buzzing not with thoughts, but impressions. Smoke, chanting, the swell of drums, the shimmer of mirror light on sacred stone. And one strange thing you can't shake, that cuneiform tablet. You pull it out again and read the opening line. "To she who stirs the silent stars." It's a prayer, all right? Or a spell? Or maybe a poem meant to be whispered just before dawn. You slip it into a small clay jar tucked in your storage niche. Let the future argue about it. You finally head toward your own quarters. Your feet are lead bricks. Your tunic smells like smoke and apricot juice. You could sleep for 1,000 years, or at least until the next lunar festival. On your way, you pass a small shrine tucked into the wall, a niche barely larger than a basket. It holds a single lamp, still lit. You don't know who keeps it burning. Some say it's for the goddess of forgotten things. You pause. Whisper a thank you. Keep walking. Just outside your door, you find a gift. A small clay goat, expertly carved, with a ridiculous grin and a bit of lapis for an eye. There's no note, just Maylee's unmistakable handiwork. You grin. Open your door. Inside, your room is simple. Low bed, 2 shelves, a jug of clean water, and your own carefully curated collection of weird ceremonial leftovers. A chipped libation cup, a feather from a dancer's veil, a bronze spoon once blessed by a slightly confused monk. You lie back. Let your limbs go heavy. Your mind drifts through the evening's events, the procession, the chant, the mirror flash of sunlight and the whispering crowd, and that feeling, however brief, that you had helped something ancient breathe again. Sleep starts to pull you under. Just before it takes you, a single thought rises. You should probably start planning next month's blessing of the river reeds. You groan. And then, mercifully, the night takes you. You wake to birds. Not the elegant, poetic kind. No, these are aggressive rooftop pigeons, yelling about nothing in particular. Possibly taxes. The light that slips through your shutters is soft and golden, hinting that dawn has barely kissed the horizon. Your body protests with every movement. Your brain feels like it's wrapped in barley dough. You groan. And then you remember. The temple floor is clean. The feast is over. No one needs a last-minute parade. No sacred vegetables need arranging. You can sleep in. But of course, you don't. Because the brain of an orgy planner, ritual experience coordinator, never truly rests. Even now, your mind ticks through tasks. Storage inventory. Guest tablet returns. Replacement of the priest's cushion that dream singer consecrated during the second chant. You rub your temples and rise, groggy but curious about what today holds now that the ritual dust has settled. You throw open your shutters. Uruk stretches before you like a painting still drying. The sun breaks through the mist over the canal, casting shimmering lines across the mud-brick rooftops. Below, early risers are already hauling baskets of dates, sweeping doorsteps, and shouting casual insults about someone's lentil prices. You dress quickly. Nothing ceremonial, just a plain tunic with minimal embroidery, and step into the narrow alley that leads toward the temple. Halfway there, you're intercepted. "Planner!" You turn. It's a courier, barely 15, clutching a wax-sealed clay tablet and panting like he's just outrun a demon. "This arrived from Nippur." You raise an eyebrow. Nippur isn't exactly next door. You break the seal. It's an invitation, or a threat, or both. The Grand Temple of Enlil is preparing for their high festival of wind. They request your experience coordination expertise, a phrase that sounds like either deep respect or bureaucratic menace. You sigh. Another festival, another orgy, another 12-day stress spiral decorated in lapis. You tuck the tablet into your sash. That's a problem for tomorrow. Right now, your goal is simple. A walk. A real one. No guest lists, no priestly tantrums, just you, your sandals, and a mild curiosity about the state of Uruk's northern market. You head there through winding streets where cats lounge atop bread ovens and children draw fish in the dust. A woman selling pomegranate wine offers you a sample for the soul, not the tongue. It's fizzy and too sweet. You love it. The market is still waking. Vendors arrange copper trinkets on linen mats. A boy is playing a reed pipe terribly. A butcher sharpens his blade while humming a tune suspiciously similar to last night's prayer chant. You pass by an old astrologer scrawling marks into damp sand, muttering about unusual moon patterns. He looks up and grins. "Ah, you, the orgy magician." You blink. That's not my title. But it should be. In a quieter corner of the market, you stumble upon a stall you've never noticed. It's small, shaded, and smells faintly of old papyrus and citrus oil. The woman behind it wears many rings and a serene expression. "Looking for something?" she asks. "Not particularly." "Then you'll find it." You glance at her offerings, bundles of herbs, carved amulets, fragments of broken tablets. One catches your eye. A cracked piece of clay bearing only a few cuneiform lines. You read it slowly. "To sleep is to walk the sky backwards." You frown. "Is that a proverb?" "Or a weather forecast," she says. You buy it anyway, give her a copper sliver, and leave with the tablet wrapped in cloth. As you walk, you try to guess its original context. Was it part of a dream journal? A philosophical ramble from a half-drunk monk? A poetic complaint about insomnia? Mesopotamians, after all, treated dreams as more than nighttime nonsense. They were messages from gods, glimpses of futures, or riddles to be solved before breakfast. Entire schools existed just to interpret them. One surviving tablet even insists that dreaming of a white donkey meant you'd soon inherit your uncle's sandals. South Deep stuff. You return to the temple by late morning, just in time to see Atana arguing with a delivery man over the wrong type of sesame paste. No, crushed, not ground. Do I look like someone who'd serve ground? You slip past them and head to the upper levels, where the sun warms the sandstone like a well-baked flatbread. There you finally sit with no emergencies, no rituals, no impending goat-based drama. Just sun. And silence. Well, mostly silence, until a novice acolyte walks past singing what sounds suspiciously like a love song to a ziggurat. But you'll take it. You think back on the last few days. The chaotic planning, the dancing, the accidental fish prophecy. You replay little flashes. The shimmer of mirrors, the taste of honeycakes, the strange calm that came after the final chant. And for a brief, impossible moment you feel still. Not planning, not predicting, just existing. You remember the cracked tablet in your pocket. You pull it out, reread the line. To sleep is to walk the sky backwards. You grin. Maybe the old scribe who wrote that knew something you didn't. Maybe dreams really do reverse the heavens. Or maybe, just maybe, someone in 2,000 years will find this broken shard, read your scribbles, and think, who the hell is Dreamsinger? You laugh. Out loud, startling a pigeon. A moment later, Melly appears at the top of the stairs with 2 cups of date brew and a suspiciously unreadable expression. Do I want to know what you're laughing about? No. She hands you a cup and sits beside you. Below, the city hums. Life ticks on. You clink your clay mugs together. To dreams. To goats. To nothing catching fire. You sip, warm and content. And for once, just for a while, there's nothing to plan. Just sun, wind, and a city that's somehow still standing. You wake again to a gentler light this time, the sun filtering through your reed blinds in thin golden stripes that dance on the mud floor of your room. Your limbs feel a little less like stone, but your mind is still thick with the remnants of last night's dreams. Some half-remembered visions of stars whispering secrets, of the silent fig tree from the tablet, and of the stubborn goat grinning from its clay perch. You stretch, savoring the slow start. No festivals today, no temple politics, no frantic scribbling of guest lists or last-minute invitations, just the ordinary hum of Uruk, waking like a slow sigh. You make your way down to the canal, the air cool and sharp with the scent of river mud and early blossoms. Along the banks, farmers unload baskets of barley and flax, their calloused hands steady even in the morning chill. The water ripples gently, reflecting the sky like a cracked mirror. You pause to watch a group of children playing by the water's edge, their laughter sharp and clear as they chase one another in circles, slipping and tumbling without care. One boy catches a small fish with bare hands and holds it up triumphantly before letting it slip back into the current. The simplicity of it strikes you. This is life as it always was. Cycles of growth and harvest, play and work, life and death, punctuated by the grand rituals you orchestrate but never quite control. You remember something you read once, that the ancient Mesopotamians believed the river gods controlled the fates of crops, cities, and even kings. The Euphrates and Tigris were not just waterways, but living beings, unpredictable and powerful. Historians still argue whether these deities were primarily feared or loved, but you suspect it was a complicated mix of both. After all, you wouldn't throw a party without inviting someone who might flood the place the next day. A rustle nearby draws your attention. An old man in simple robes approaches, carrying a basket woven from reeds. He nods to you and offers a handful of fresh figs. "From the temple garden," he says, "for the planner who keeps the gods pleased." You smile, accepting the fruit. Sweet and sticky, the figs seem almost to pulse with life. He tells you stories as you walk, tales of a festival long past when the river changed its course overnight, washing away entire fields but saving the city from famine. Stories of strange omens, like a blue heron that circled the ziggurat 7 times before disappearing. You listen, fascinated. In a quiet moment, he leans in and lowers his voice. "Did you know the word cuneiform means wedge-shaped?" The scribes carved their symbols with a sharpened reed pressed into wet clay. It was the world's first writing system, but it's also one of the hardest to read. You nod. You've seen tablets full of these wedge-shaped marks, some painstakingly neat, others rushed and messy, like the desperate notes of a sleep-deprived priest. "You're lucky," he says with a grin. "Most people don't get to hold a real tablet, let alone make sense of it." You finger the small clay shard wrapped in cloth, the one with the strange proverb about sleep and the sky. Somehow it feels less like a puzzle and more like a companion. As you part ways with the old man, you realize this is what you like best about your work: the layers of time folded into each moment, the past brushing gently against the present like a soft breeze. You continue your walk to the ziggurat's base, where a few temple workers are already setting up scaffolding for repairs. You watch as they chip away at crumbling mud brick, carefully replacing the worn edges with fresh clay. It's meticulous, repetitive work, humble, and utterly necessary. You think about how the ziggurat has survived centuries, built up, repaired, repurposed again and again. Historians still debate whether it was originally intended as a temple, an astronomical observatory, or maybe even both. The truth is probably a messy combination of practical needs and spiritual dreams. You find yourself wondering what the builders thought as they laid each brick. Did they imagine the festivals to come? The chanting priests? The scribes forever inscribing stories into clay? You feel a kinship with them, these ancient planners and dreamers tied together by the slow, steady work of making something that lasts. The sun climbs higher, warming your shoulders. You take a deep breath of the dusty air, filled with promise and history. The day stretches out before you, slow and full of quiet possibility. And for once, you're content to simply be. The heat of midday presses down like a heavy blanket as you make your way back through Uruk's winding streets, your sandals kicking up tiny clouds of dust with every step. The city hums with life, merchants hawking their wares, children darting through alleyways, and the sharp scent of freshly baked bread mingling with the less charming aromas of animal pens. You pause at the marketplace, where a peculiar scene is unfolding. A group of scribes, faces creased with concentration, crowd around a large clay tablet propped up on a wooden stand. Their fingers trace the wedge-shaped marks as if trying to unlock a secret message only the stars themselves could understand. You lean in to read a few lines. It's a recently discovered hymn dedicated to Nana, the moon god, praising his silver light and mysterious glow. The hymn ends with an odd verse about the laughter of the river's edge, a phrase that has historians debating whether it's metaphorical or a literal description of water sounds during certain tides. One of the scribes notices your interest and beckons you closer. "We are practicing cuneiform calligraphy," she explains, "the art of the wedge-shaped script. It's both a craft and a devotion." You watch her carefully form each symbol, impressed by the skill required to press sharp reeds into soft clay without cracking or smudging. She tells you a quirky tidbit. Some scribes believed that writing a mistake in cuneiform was a bad omen, so they'd often bury flawed tablets in the temple grounds as offerings to the gods. You smile at the idea of a pile of failed messages to the divine, hidden beneath the very stones where priests once prayed. As the sun reaches its zenith, you retreat to a shaded courtyard behind the temple, where cool breezes rustle date palm fronds overhead. Here, you meet with Meli, who is surprisingly chipper despite the recent festival chaos. She pulls out a small bag filled with dried herbs. "For your nerves," she says, tossing you a sprig of hyssop. "It's supposed to help with sleep and maybe keep away bad spirits." You take it, grateful for the gesture. As you roll the fragrant leaves between your fingers, your thoughts drift to the peculiar rituals of ancient Mesopotamia. You recall one bizarre custom. During certain festivals, people would release live fish into the temple pools as symbols of fertility and renewal. Sometimes, these fish were believed to carry prayers directly to the gods. You glance around, half expecting to see a fish swimming in an ornate basin nearby. Historians still argue whether such rituals were primarily symbolic or held practical significance in agricultural cycles. Regardless, you think it's a charming reminder that no matter how grand or chaotic the festivals, the people always found ways to connect with nature's rhythms. Meli nudges you. "Enough thinking. Let's see if you can handle some actual work." She hands you a tablet, this one a list of supplies needed for the upcoming festival preparations. Your task: double-check the quantities and make sure nothing's missing. You sigh, but accept. The tablet is heavy in your hands, the script neat but dense. You start reading aloud. 20 jars of sesame oil, 50 bundles of barley, 10 lambs for sacrifice. As you tally the list, your mind drifts again to the complexity of Mesopotamian bureaucracy. The city depended on these meticulous records, which scribes updated daily to keep everything running smoothly, from grain stores to temple offerings to the city's growing population. And yet, despite all this order, you know there's always an element of unpredictability. A misplaced goat, a sudden flood, a forgotten chant. The ancient planners, like you, had to dance between precision and chaos, crafting moments of sacred celebration while hoping the gods didn't throw a tantrum. You glance up from the tablet and catch Meli watching you with a raised eyebrow. "Planning still your favorite thing?" You grin. "Wouldn't trade it for the world." She laughs. "Good, because there's plenty more where that came from." The afternoon sun begins to soften, casting long shadows across the courtyard. You tuck the tablet away, feeling the familiar mix of fatigue and satisfaction that comes from a day spent both dreaming and doing. As you stand to leave, you notice a group of musicians setting up nearby. Reed pipes, drums, and lyres ready to fill the evening air with sound. You smile, thinking of the rituals yet to come, the stories still unfolding, and the quiet magic hidden in every wedge-shaped mark on a clay tablet. For now, though, you let yourself breathe and listen. The evening light slips through the narrow windows of your room like a slow-moving river, casting long, lazy shadows on the mud-brick walls. The city outside is settling into its nightly rhythm. Smoke curling from clay ovens, distant laughter drifting through alleyways, and the faint murmur of water flowing through the canals. You sit cross-legged on your woven mat, the day's exhaustion pressing down, but your mind still buzzing with fragments of the festival preparations and curious conversations. You reach for the small clay tablet you've been carrying. a fragment of ancient wisdom wrapped in cloth, and hold it up to the fading light. The cuneiform script catches the glow, those wedge-shaped marks like tiny fingers reaching across time. You wonder about the scribe who pressed those symbols. Did they imagine you would be here centuries later, tracing their words with such quiet reverence? Or was it just a casual note, a scribbled proverb meant only for their own tired eyes? To sleep is to walk the sky backwards. You whisper the line again, tasting its mystery on your tongue. Sleep, the final frontier. The Mesopotamians believed dreams were more than random images. They were messages from the gods, warnings, blessings, or glimpses of the future. One tablet advises the dreamer to consult a honorist if a dream involved water or snakes, symbols heavy with meaning and peril. Another, more whimsical, warns that dreaming of a lion means trouble, unless you dreamt the lion was friendly, in which case expect a party. You chuckle softly. You've certainly seen your share of both. As night deepens, you decide to take a short walk beneath the stars, the sky above Uruk, a sprawling tapestry of glittering points. The ziggurat looms in the distance, its silhouette sharp against the horizon, reminding you of countless nights spent planning rituals beneath its watchful gaze. You stroll toward the riverbank, where the cool breeze carries the scent of damp reeds and distant fires. A few fishermen pull in their nets, their faces glowing in firelight, silent except for the occasional creak of wood or splash of water. You pause to watch the water ripple, thinking about how the river shapes everything: life, death, celebrations, even your own plans. Nearby, an old woman sits on a low stool, weaving baskets with practiced hands. She greets you with a nod and offers a small woven charm shaped like a fish. "For protection," she says softly. "The river's gifts are generous, but never forget they can turn quick." You tuck the charm into your sash, grateful for the reminder. You wander back towards the city, the narrow streets quieter now, lit by flickering oil lamps casting pools of golden light on rough stone. You pass by the temple, where priests still move quietly, tending to late-night offerings. The soft chanting from within blends with the sound of water dripping somewhere in the shadows. You think about the grand rituals and quiet moments that weave together to create the tapestry of life here. How every festival, every feast, every whispered prayer is part of a long conversation between humans and gods, a conversation written not only in grand temples, but also in small tokens, cracked tablets, and shared stories. Historians still debate the exact purposes of many rituals. Were they primarily spiritual, political, or social? The truth, you suspect, lies somewhere in the tangled middle. You head back home, the city now a lullaby of soft sounds and gentle movements. As you lie down on your woven mattress, the charm warm against your skin, your thoughts drift toward dreams, backward walking skies, whispered messages, and the endless dance between past and present. You close your eyes. And for a moment, the world feels as vast and mysterious as the stars above. The first light of dawn filters softly through the narrow slats of your window, painting your room in gentle amber hues. You rise slowly, your body still heavy with the residue of last night's dreams. Vague images of river gods and shadowy figures weaving through the streets of Uruk. Outside, the city stirs. The familiar sounds greet you: the clatter of pottery wheels, the chatter of merchants setting up their stalls, and the rhythmic splash of water being drawn from wells. You step outside, greeted by the warm breath of the morning air and the sweet scent of blooming date palms. The canals sparkle like ribbons of silver, snaking through the bustling cityscape. This is the heartbeat of Mesopotamia, the place where history hums beneath the surface of everyday life. Today, your focus is on the artisans. Their work is the pulse of the city, crafting everything from finely woven textiles to intricate jewelry made from lapis lazuli, the precious stone treasured by kings and priests alike. You make your way to a pottery workshop where a skilled craftsman shapes clay on a spinning wheel, his hands steady despite the speed of his movements. He tells you about a curious ritual. Before crafting the first pot, he sprinkles a handful of barley on the floor as an offering to the goddess Nisaba, patron of writing and grain. It's a small gesture, but one filled with meaning, an acknowledgement that even the simplest acts are tied to divine favor. Historians still argue whether these offerings were purely symbolic or believed to imbue the object with spiritual power, but either way, the practice endures. Nearby, a group of weavers work their looms, the soft clatter of threads weaving a quiet rhythm. They speak of a festival coming soon, where the finest textiles will be presented as gifts to the temple. The colors they use, deep reds, rich blues, come from natural dyes extracted from plants and minerals, each hue carrying its own significance. You watch as a young apprentice struggles to keep pace, her fingers fumbling but determined. It reminds you of the way the city itself is woven together. Layers of skill and tradition, patience and persistence. In the corner of the workshop, a scribe sits hunched over a tablet, copying a list of materials needed for the festival preparations. You glance over his shoulder and see the wedge-shaped marks tracing out names of goods. Cedar wood, incense, honey. You ask about his work, and he explains how important these records are for the city's economy. Without careful accounting, the delicate balance of trade and tribute would collapse. You smile, thinking how this all echoes your own role, keeping the threads of celebration and order intertwined. Suddenly, your attention is caught by a peculiar sound, a soft chattering coming from a nearby basket. You peek inside to find a small clay figure, shaped like a goat with exaggerated features, grinning broadly. The craftsman laughs. "That's a magic goat. They say it brings good luck to the household and scares away evil spirits. Not sure if it works, but it's a popular charm." You nod, amused. Ancient Mesopotamia certainly had its share of quirky rituals alongside the grand ceremonies. As the sun climbs higher, you feel the warmth seep into your bones. You take a moment to breathe in the city's vibrant life, the mingling scents, the sounds of creation, the quiet hum of history in the making. You think about how these artisans, scribes, and planners, each playing their part, have shaped the city's soul, building a legacy in mud brick and dreams. And as you move on, the promise of another day, another festival, another story, feels as certain as the rising sun. The afternoon sun warms the mud brick walls of Uruk as you wander toward the city's edge, where the bustling urban life fades into the wide expanse of cultivated fields. The scent of tilled earth and ripening grain fills the air, mingling with the occasional sharp tang of animal pens. This boundary between city and countryside is where the true lifeblood of Mesopotamia pulses, the farmers, the fields, the water channels that feed them all. You watch as a group of farmers work the soil with wooden plows pulled by oxen, their steady rhythm marked by the occasional lowing of the animals. Barley stalks sway gently in the breeze, a sea of green and gold rolling toward the horizon. This is the grain that fills city granaries and fuels celebrations alike. You recall how the ancient Mesopotamians developed irrigation systems that were among the earliest of their kind, turning the unpredictable rivers into controlled lifelines. Without these canals and dikes, much of the fertile land would lie fallow. Historians still debate how much centralized planning was involved, versus local cooperation, but it's clear that water management was both a technical marvel and a political challenge. Nearby, a group of women is harvesting flax, their hands quick and practiced. They gather the plants into bundles, ready to be processed into linen cloth, essential for both everyday wear and temple garments. You smile, remembering the festival preparations where the finest linens will be draped on statues of gods and gifted to priests. A peculiar sight catches your eye: a small clay figurine, shaped like a seated figure with exaggerated eyes, nestled among the plants. Local farmers call these apotropaic figures, meant to ward off evil spirits that might damage crops. You've heard that sometimes these figurines were buried at the edges of fields, a silent guardian watching over the harvest. You think about how such simple objects carry layers of meaning, part superstition, part faith, part human hope for safety in an uncertain world. You stop by a canal where a man is releasing a handful of tiny fish into the water. You remember the strange ritual you heard about where fish were introduced to temple pools as symbolic offerings, believed to carry prayers to the gods. This small act, repeated by fishermen and farmers alike, weaves nature, belief, and survival into a seamless whole. As the sun dips lower, the sky blooms with colors: orange, pink, and deepening blue. You feel the day's warmth fading into a soothing coolness, the kind that invites quiet reflection. You lean against an ancient palm tree, its rough bark a comforting anchor beneath your fingertips. The rhythmic sounds of water flowing through canals and distant voices chanting temple hymns meld into a soft lullaby. The Mesopotamian day may be full of noise and activity, but there are moments like this, calm, profound, that remind you why you love being part of this ancient world. Historians continue to argue about the exact roles these rituals and objects played in everyday life. Were they truly believed to influence the divine, or were they social customs that reinforced community bonds? You suspect it was a bit of both, as with so much in Mesopotamia. You stand, ready to return to the city, your heart full of the quiet power of earth and water, of human hands working in harmony with the gods' whims. The festival awaits, but for now the fields speak softly, and you listen. The night settles over Uruk like a soft, dark blanket, and you find yourself drawn once again toward the great ziggurat, its silhouette etched sharply against a sky thick with stars. The city has quieted down, but here, near the temple, a low hum of voices and the flicker of torchlight remind you that the festival preparations are far from over. You walk among the priests and acolytes, their robes rustling softly as they move with purpose and reverence. Tonight, they will perform the rite of the eternal flame, a ceremony meant to rekindle the sacred fire that symbolizes the gods' presence on earth. You watch as a priest carefully tends to the fire altar, adding cedar wood and sprinkling fragrant incense. The smoke curls upward in delicate spirals, carrying prayers toward the heavens. Historians still argue whether the eternal flame was primarily a spiritual symbol or a practical means to keep the temple warm during cool desert nights. But either way, its glow is mesmerizing. Nearby, musicians begin to play reed pipes and frame drums, filling the air with haunting melodies that ripple through the crowd. You feel the vibrations in your chest, the steady beat coaxing the assembled worshippers into a trance-like state. As the ceremony unfolds, you think back to the curious tradition of pouring beer into the temple's sacred pools as an offering. It sounds odd to modern ears, but beer was a vital part of Mesopotamian life, both nourishment and sacred libation. Some priests believed the fermented drink pleased the gods and invited their blessings. You notice children watching wide-eyed, clutching small clay vessels, their faces illuminated by torchlight and wonder. The ceremony transitions into a procession, winding through the city streets. Participants carry statues of gods, their features carved with striking detail, shimmering with gold leaf and lapis lazuli accents. You catch the scent of myrrh and frankincense mingling with the night air. Your own role tonight is to ensure the logistics, double-checking that offerings reach the temple on time, coordinating with market vendors to replenish supplies, and calming nerves when the inevitable small crisis arises, like a missing bundle of incense or a late arrival of sheep. Despite the chaos, there is a deep satisfaction in this work, knowing that every careful detail sustains a tradition stretching back centuries. As the procession returns to the temple, the crowd's energy swells, a mixture of devotion, relief, and celebration. You spot Meili among the priests, her face flushed with excitement. She nods at you, a silent thank you for your steady hands behind the scenes. The night grows late. You find a quiet corner to rest, the sounds of music and prayer fading into the background. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows, and you think about the long day that's passed, from dawn's first light to this sacred moment. You marvel at how these ancient rituals, steeped in mystery and meaning, have endured through time, connecting the living to the divine. And as your eyelids grow heavy, you realize that in this ancient city, history isn't just something to study, it's something to live, breathe, and dream. As the night deepens and the city's bustle fades into gentle whispers, you feel a soothing calm settle over you. The ziggurat's silhouette, once towering and commanding, now seems like a quiet guardian watching over the sleeping streets below. The soft glow of oil lamps flickers like distant stars, inviting your mind to drift slowly, gently toward rest. You remember the river's steady murmur, the rustling palms, the scent of baked bread mingled with fresh earth. Simple, grounding moments that have threaded through your day. Each sound, each smell, a small anchor pulling you back from the swirl of thoughts, the complexities of ancient rituals and bustling festivals. In this quiet, you find comfort in the thought that the people of Mesopotamia, with all their prayers, plans, and peculiar customs, were not so different from you. They sought meaning, connection, and a sense of order in a world both beautiful and unpredictable. As your breathing slows, the endless stories woven into the clay tablets and temple stones begin to fade softly into the background, like a lullaby whispered just for you. You can almost hear the distant chants carried on the night breeze, mingling with the soft splash of water in the canals. Rest now, knowing that history is not just a record of the past, but a gentle companion, guiding you into peaceful sleep. Tomorrow the cycle will begin again. The sun will rise, the city will awaken, and the ancient rhythms will continue steady and sure. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.